All right, panel team, Jenni and Peter. JR, a viewer or listener out there, says, how much do real political pros, comms pros, spend worrying about what's said on social media? Is what happens on Twitter and Facebook a big deal, or do we try to block it out? Jenni, you're the only one of us that actually is of an age to have worked with social media, so maybe you could give it a go.
Listen, I have never spent much time worrying about it. I think it really, some politicians do, some people do. I personally never have. I've had horrible things said about me on Twitter. Someone called me a CUNT and said they wished I got cancer and died once. That was probably the worst that I've had said. But I think that it is a mechanism to communicate to the media. It's become more and more a mechanism through Facebook and other social media ads to communicate to voters, members, what have you. Everyone is on Facebook mostly because they want to see the pictures of their grandkids posted up. But I don't think that I don't think you have to worry too much on the reactive stuff. The chatter, if you're spending time working on it, it's basically in terms of a social media campaign, which is no different than what we would have done 20 years ago with a TV ad buy or a radio buy or what have you, in a nutshell.
Now, Peter, you're not even on Twitter, are you?
No, I'm not. And actually, the reason I'm not on Twitter is quite interesting. Is I went about 5 years ago, or 7 years ago, when I saw that everybody else was doing it. I said, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get on. And I went to register, and I found that there was already a Peter Donolo registered. But there is no other Peter Donolo, okay, in more ways than one. But there's certainly no one with my name. And so I said, like, what the hell is this? And it turns out, and maybe Jenni knows about it, because it turns out it was registered in 2011, at the time that I was helping Michael Ignatieff in my ill-fated efforts in that 2011 election. I think what happened is the Conservative War Room preempted my going on Twitter by registering under my name. So I tried to get my name back. And, 7 years later, I tried to get my name back, or 5 years later, and they said, no, there might be another Peter Donolo, even though no one's ever posted anything. Okay. And so I was pretty pissed off. And so then I just forgot about it. And I'm really glad I did. I am really glad I did, because I am the wrong person for Twitter. I'm a hothead, okay, who says things, and then either a hothead, half the time I'm a hothead, the other half I'm a wise ass, okay? So I say things I think are really clever, and then 5 minutes later I realize how stupid they are. And so Twitter is bad for people like me, and I'm glad I'm not there. I think and I'm also glad, because I would be like everybody else, which is like down the rabbit hole of following all this crazy stuff instead of living my own life. Okay, and I see that happen to the smartest, most accomplished, most intelligent people, even people who don't post, but who follow a ton of people. And I find it frustrating and crazy. So that's my view. I think that, listen, in some ways, social media, we know how toxic it can be and has been. We were talking about Trump earlier, but also through the the dissemination of disinformation and of hatred and anger. So we know how toxic it can be then. And there's also the question is, the notion of how it reflects real life. We've been talking in recent days about Biden. I happen to believe he's going to win and win big. And if all you've done is follow Twitter in the primaries, okay, you would have been shocked that Biden won in South Carolina and then racked up all those huge victories afterwards. The fact is that Twitter is social media are an imitation of life. They're not life itself. They're a kind of funhouse mirror of life. And if we spend all our time kind of immersed in that funhouse mirror, we forget actually that most people live their lives based on a series of criteria that are often highly personal and highly situational to their lives. And that Twitter is Twitter in particular. I use Twitter, but all social media is they see as something more like entertainment and peripheral to their lives than central.
Yeah, I mean, Twitter is so marginal. People need to remember that, right? Like less than 10% of the population has a Twitter account, and not many of those people actually use it. So the number of people that are active on Twitter, it's very distorting. I think one of the best decisions I made in the 2014 Kathleen Wynne campaign was to go off Twitter. I've got a bit of a Twitter addiction myself. But for the 2014 campaign, I decided to go right off it. I was not going to be distracted by what Andrew Coyne thought about our platform. And I think it was very helpful to be clear-headed and have that difference. And when you're away from it, I think you realize you don't miss anything. You may learn something 7 minutes later than somebody else learns it, but you don't actually miss any important information if you're not on Twitter. Thank you very much for that question, and come to our website, ask more viewer mail, listener mail questions, and we'll answer them next week. Thanks very much.